When I was in Rome, I had the opportunity to speak with Father John Wauck. Father John Wauck is a priest of Opus Dei from the Washington, D.C. area. He's been in Rome for over 20 years and appeared on networks like EWTN, ABC News, among others. I think you'll really enjoy this conversation, so let's get right into it. Thank you, Father John Wauck, for joining us here today.
Not
Really
at all.
appreciate your
My
time.
pleasure. Always a pleasure to be here. And
It is a pleasure.
looking at the scenery behind us.
Yes. It really is incredible. We've been filming here for a couple of days, and just being here at the foot of Vatican Hill, it really feels a special place.
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. So can you start us off telling us a little bit about your time, growing up and your vocation story?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm originally from Chicago, from Park Ridge, just outside of the city, and I lived in the United States for. Right now, it's actually a half of my life.
Wow.
We're exactly at the halfway point. I'm 62.
Okay.
31 years in the U.S., 31 years in Rome.
Wow.
But in the U.S., I was in Chicago until I went to college. I went to Harvard as an undergrad and did Renaissance history and literature without knowing or dreaming that I would spend most of my adult life in Rome.
In the place where those things
it
were
turned out
written.
to be very handy.
Yeah.
But I didn't take advantage of that education immediately, in the sense that I went to New York and I worked as a writer in New York. I lived in Manhattan, in Westchester County. I lived in Princeton for a while. And then after about 5 years, I moved to Washington, D.C. To go to graduate school in psychology. I'm the son of a psychologist. My dad was a professor at Loyola in Chicago. I'm the youngest of a big, Chicago Catholic family of 8. I ended up getting a job writing speeches for the Attorney General.
Wow.
This is the time of the first Bush the dad, right after Ronald Reagan. That presidency, so it was only one term, and I wrote speeches for the Attorney General for the last 2 years of that. And that was William Barr, who had ended up becoming Attorney General again. And the Bush during the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, when Bill Clinton won the presidency in '92. Obviously, Bush, Barr, and way down the totem pole, me, were out of work. I had to find something else to do. And I ended up going to Pennsylvania, to Harrisburg, to write speeches for the governor of Pennsylvania, who was a Democrat, Robert Casey. William Casey is the CIA. Robert Casey, Bob Casey, was the governor of Pennsylvania. His son then was the senator of Pennsylvania. But he is the one who people would know as the Casey of Casey versus Planned Parenthood, the Supreme Court decision. That was out of a law that was passed by Casey in Pennsylvania that Planned Parenthood challenged and took to the Supreme Court.
Wow.
So he was the last of the sort of pro-life Democrats. He was a classic sort of JFK kind of era Democrat. And they became harder and harder to find, but he was the last really great pro-life Democrat. I joined Opus Dei as a numerary in high school.
Oh, wow.
So back in Chicago, I had already encountered Opus Dei. My mother was in Opus Dei. My father was not then. He later joined Opus Dei. But so when I went to Harvard, for instance, I was already in Opus Dei when I was writing and all. And so, major decisions about dedicating my life to God had already been taken. It wasn't, so it wasn't a big change to go up to Rome and the head of Opus Dei in the U.S. at that time said, so what do you think about going to Rome? And and I said, okay, I'm up for that. And I had been thinking of going back to study philosophy in the U.S. as one of the possibilities anyway. So
Yeah.
It fit very easily, and the idea that maybe I had a vocation of the priesthood was also I was very open to that, and so I came here in '95 in June, Feast of Peter and Paul, actually. I got here 29th of June, and really haven't
Yeah.
gone anywhere since.
Yeah.
I've lived here. I've been briefly in the United States. The longest I was in the U.S. was, I was writing my doctoral dissertation in Cambridge. Actually, when September 11th, I was in the United States for that.
Wow.
So the planes that flew out of Boston, they flew right by me on the down to New York.
Wow.
I was locked in a room writing, and I didn't find out until anything had happened until lunchtime.
Wow.
I was, this was back in the day when you could do that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get attacked by messages on a cell phone or on a computer or anything.
Yeah.
I was there with my books in an attic room all morning, and I came down and the world had changed.
Wow.
While I was studying.
Yeah. Can you share more about your time here at Santa Croce and just how it's evolved and your various roles here and just
I've been here a long time. So I got here, as I say, in '95, and I was doing a doctorate, first a license, and then a doctorate in philosophy. And I wrote my dissertation about an American novelist who was a convert to Catholicism named Walker Percy.
Oh, wow, okay.
But I didn't write about his novels because he also wrote a lot of essays. And this was a philosophy thesis. It wasn't a literature thesis. So it's really about his more philosophical side.
Yeah.
But it did involve art and literature, but how it's seen from a epistemological point of view. What do you know when you know a work of art? What is it like? A piece of news, or is it like a chair, or is it like, what is it you're knowing when you know art, right? Is it a message, a telegram, or something, or how is it communicate meaning and things like that? Those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
And so that was my doctoral dissertation, but at the same time, like shortly after I arrived here, the year after I got here, the communications school was opened, and I think the university authorities said, well, here we have an American who speaks English, who's been a writer, has written speeches. He should know something about communications. And so I was kind of drawn into the orbit of the communications program. It took me forever to finish my dissertation because I was also developing a course and teaching in the communications program while I was finishing the philosophy. So that took, I didn't finish the doctorate until almost 15 years later. Yeah. Wow. 2010-ish, right?
Wow.
Yeah, but I did a license, like a master's degree.
Yeah.
And then the doctorate. So that took a while, and so I was teaching in the communications program, but I didn't teach speech writing or anything like that. What I taught was actually what I studied in college, which was literature.
Wow.
And basically, the course that I teach is I did a series for Mother Angelica, the EWTN, 13 or 14 part series. It was called A Mirror of the Soul, Christian history of literature, or maybe a better put, history of Christian literature. And so what my course is, I would describe it, more accurately as a brief introduction to the literary culture of Christianity. That's what I teach, really. Beautiful. 20 centuries, all languages, all genres. I mean, it's literature in the strict sense. In other words, it's poetry, plays, stories, novels, hymns, and as much as they're poetry, that kind of stuff. Not, Thomas Aquinas or something. The literature of theology. That's theology. My course is like fine arts, that communicates the faith.
Beautiful.
And so that's really what I've been doing. I've also taught apologetics,
Okay.
and I've also taught fundamental theology, which is kind of like apologetics, but that was in the theology department, not in the communications department. And I've taught other sort of mini courses
Yeah.
on literary theory and things like that, more like seminars. And we started a program, two big things that I've been involved in. One is called Poetics and Christianity, and the other is called The Church Up Close.
Mm.
And every other year we do one or the other. There's the communications program has also every other year alternating a course that is very, very popular for the heads of communication of dioceses, well, church communicators generally.
Yes.
And, you know, the massive crowds coming for like 300 people or
Wow.
400 when we do that from all over the world.
That's great.
And then there's a much more niche kind of seminar of the Church Up Close, it's called, which is basically for journalists who are covering the Vatican, but don't live in Rome.
Ah, okay.
Because we do things every month. We have an ongoing series of classes and things for journalists who are based in Rome.
Yeah.
It's in Italian, and we invite, you know, people from the Vatican and, you know, experts to talk to the journalists, to help the journalists do a better job, basically. And that was very popular, but there's a group of people who are not here in Rome, but are still writing about the church a lot. And so we decided, why don't we just, you know, cram all of that material into 1 week, invite people, have it in English, not Italian. So it's in English, it's 1 week, it's a crash course on the Vatican, right?
Wow.
The Catholic Church seen from Rome.
Wow.
And we've been doing that since, well, John Paul's papacy for sure.
Wow.
That's the Church Up Close. And so I'm very involved in that. And then the Poetics and Christianity is more like what I teach.
Yeah.
And we're about to have a seminar on C.S. Lewis.
Wow.
We've
I saw
done
the
things
sign
on
for that.
Dostoevsky, Tolkien. We've had more thematic ones about 20th century writers, for instance, or Catholic writers of the 20th century. We had one on the return home, kind of as a theme in literature and things like that.
Yeah.
About conversions largely, you know.
Welcome to the rooftop of the Pontifical University of Holy Cross in Rome. I invite you to join me this October 12th through the 16th on pilgrimage. We'll visit St. Peter's Basilica, walk in the footsteps of St. Francis in Assisi, and learn from world-class professors here at the university. Go to puhcf.org/Rome to sign up. Spots are filling up very fast, so please go there today. Ciao. Can you tell us a little bit about why you think literature remains such a powerful vehicle for exploring truth, conscience, and the human condition in our current secular age?
Well, my feeling about the relationship between literature and fundamental questions about God and man and human nature, basically, is that literature functions a bit as a preambula fide, which is a preparation for the faith. It's not necessarily going to announce faith. It's not the kerygma, so Jesus is risen, you know, God has become man. You know, that announcing of the faith is different from what literature does, but an appreciation for literature prepares you for that announcement in, I would say, at least two ways, but the two ways that come to mind are, one is intellectual, in the sense that stories are a way of communicating meaning that is not simply propositional, an explanation. This is the truth, right? A definition or a statement, right? And of course, the truth of Christianity is news. Something happened, and it's a story. You have to tell Christianity. You have to say, you know, some things that happened in Bethlehem,
Yeah.
in Jerusalem,
Yeah.
around Israel, and who did them and what happened, and it's a dramatic story.
It is. Yeah.
And then you have to make sense of it.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? What are the consequences for us and all? But you have to appreciate that the most meaningful thing that you can tell someone might be a story, and that's what Christianity is. And the other thing that art, I think, this is true of art in general, not just literature. The relationship between Christianity and literature frequently is to do with narrative. But there's another thing that's involved, which is beauty, and that's true of literature as art. It's also true of music and sculpture and painting and all the arts, which is the relationship between beauty and human nature, God, right? And art, the experience of art that is truly beautiful, and the contemplation in the broad sense, I mean, including listening to music, for instance, of great art, prepares you for the idea that we're made for that. We're made for contemplating beauty. And if you're a Christian, you believe that eternal life is the beatific vision.
Yeah.
You're made for contemplation, right? And you'll be happy contemplating the most beautiful things. And that's God himself.
Yeah.
And who is the creator of beautiful things as well, right?
Yeah.
Model, creator, source, exemplar of beauty is God. But our experience and the sense of a sort of ecstatic happiness that people have when they're listening to something that's just absolutely gorgeous, or just taken up in a statue, like the Pietà, and people see just looking and looking, and you never get tired.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's heaven, right?
Yeah.
You never get tired of looking at God. And art is a little bit of a foretaste of that. But it's a suggestion that that's what our nature is about. Well, that's who we are as human beings. We're made for loving, right? Obviously, but also for contemplation, right?
Yeah.
That would be, I think those two things are the sort of meaning through narrative and beauty are, I think, the deepest connections that literary art offers to questions of, I would say, theological questions, or anthropological and theological questions, right? That's how I teach my class, at least.
That's great. That's great. What about Santa Croce? Since you're both a student here for many years and a professor for many years as well.
At the same time.
At the same time. How have you seen the university evolve? I mean, the prelate of Opus Dei, when you arrived here, was that Don Alvaro?
No, he had just died.
I
I came the year after.
Oh, wow.
Don Alvaro del Portillo, who was the founder of the university.
Yes.
Right. He had just passed away.
Okay.
He 94. I arrived in June of 95.
Ah, okay. Okay.
But no, I had met him when he came to the United States.
Yes.
In the 1980s. But I arrived after he had passed away here. And so, the university obviously has changed enormously.
Yeah.
Grown a lot. There's two main sort of buildings of the university. The one we're here on top of here in Piazza Sant'Apollinare, where the classrooms are and the administration of the university is. And then there's the library, which is, a few blocks away on the other side of Piazza Farnese. And that's where my office is.
Okay.
And most of the professors' offices are there.
Yes.
The ones who are not, professors who aren't involved in the administrative roles have their offices down there. So, and there's been an enormous transformation of both of these buildings.
Yeah.
And they've been amplified.
Yeah.
An entire floor was added to this. There was a floor that was, these Roman palazzi have high ceilings, right? So we took advantage of that and put another floor.
Yeah.
So there's two floors where there used to be one.
Wow.
So it has a much lower ceiling, but you wouldn't know it. I mean, it still seems like a fairly high ceiling. It's not, the other one was very high. And so we have extra room for more students. And of course, you see students coming from different places, new, countries, new dioceses,
Yes.
and the personality of the student body, sort of their background changes.
Yeah.
It also changes culturally. I mean, when I remember, the first years of teaching, we had a lot of students in communications from Poland,
Oh, wow.
and we still have a fair number, but not as predominantly Polish as before. But they were, this is right after the fall of communism,
Wow.
and so they all spoke Russian.
Wow.
They didn't like to, but they could, right? They tried not to.
Yeah.
But they had been formed in a communist Poland,
Wow.
right? And now, of course, over the years, you see that changing, and hardly any Poles now speak Russian.
Yeah.
They all speak English.
Yeah.
And, their attitudes and their cultural background is very different, right? And that's true of basically all of Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
We have students from many Eastern countries, right? And the fall of communism is probably the thing that's most obvious.
Yeah.
In that sense. We have people from India and all the different parts of Africa, from Ethiopia to South Africa to Nigeria to Kenya to Cameroon to it's a little slice of humanity.
That's right.
When I stand in front of the class, I'm looking at 25 countries, maybe something like that. Something like that. Depends on the year.
Yeah.
And you think behind them is a diocese, and there's the souls of the people that they're going to be serving, as priests and teachers and seminaries and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, and even, I mean, I think of just the numbers and what the university was probably a few hundred students back then.
Oh, yeah.
And now, nearly 1,500 this
Exactly.
year. It's incredible to see sort of the people that God has sent really to be formed here.
Oh, sure. And how many of the students have become bishops? And
It's really cool.
They're moving into the life of the church as their age would, they get older and they take on new responsibilities. And I'm old enough now, in my early 60s, to say, that bishop was my student. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. You've commented extensively.
Someday it'll be the Pope.
You've commented extensively on church affairs for several major news outlets. What challenges do you see in communicating the Catholic faith effectively in today's fragmented, often hostile, often short attention spanned world?
I've worked, commenting on Vatican affairs, for you name it, pretty much. New York Times or Rolling Stone magazine,
Rolling Stone,
Christian Science Monitor.
Wow.
AP, which is agency, so they get quoted everywhere if you're quoted by AP. Lately, I've been under contract with ABC television for major events in the Vatican. So the last two conclaves, I worked exclusively for ABC.
Ah, okay.
But during the rest of the year, I can talk with anyone I want. But during that period, they want to have somebody they can say, come and be on television now, right? The election of Francis and the election of Leo, I was working for ABC television. And to be honest, I know it's maybe it sounds naive, but I don't have I don't see it as a great problem talking about God or religion or the church with reporters, partly because of the way in television, they want a good interview.
Yeah.
They're not usually interested in a fight.
Right.
At least not when the kind of events that I'm involved with.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in the United States in a diocese that's, charges against the bishop or something, then it could be a high tension situation.
Yeah.
But in the situation where I'm in, like the death of the Pope or the resignation of Benedict or something, everyone's just in awe of the
All eyes on Rome.
pageantry,
Yeah.
and they're eating it up.
Yeah.
And they want someone to explain it.
Yeah.
It's like, what's happening now? Who's that person? Why are they dressed that way? And I get to explain those things.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity to talk about the faith in a very kind of neutral to positive
Yes.
setting.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I've had wonderful interviews, even when there was, like the Da Vinci Code, right? You know, I did a ton of interviews. I had a blog. I had over 1 million visits, right, on the
Wow.
blog about the Da Vinci Code. I don't remember a single interview that was hostile.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, we know the book is nonsense. Tell us what Opus Dei really is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No one really believed Dan Brown's
Right.
book. But, they'd ask questions that would expect you to explain it.
Yeah.
And it was fine. And in general, I think, the beauty, the art, the sense of the sacred that you get when you're near Rome,
Yeah.
right? And especially the election of a pope or something like that. It's a cocktail that's very attractive and interesting and fascinating, and there's not a lot of competition, right? Maybe the coronation of the King of England or something was similar, right? But nowadays, and this is pageantry that people actually take seriously.
Yeah.
Not the monarchy is, it's a little bit in quotation marks. No one's not that serious about it, but people are really serious about the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
People are dying for because in witness
all over the world.
to the faith,
Yeah.
right? And in that sense, you realize this is something serious that we're witnessing, and we have to take advantage of this moment. So, especially with television, where pageantry is, the visuals are so important, right? And all of the roofs in that neighborhood around St. Peter's are already leased for the next big event, whatever it might be.
Wow.
They already rent out those roofs.
Wow.
For the different, CNN has one, CBS, NBC, and other countries as well. So everyone's got their roof, because it's something that's so unique, and they want to put on a good show for the audience. The harder things are interviews that might be like for a book or something where they're probing things, but that's not, television is not that way.
No.
If you have something good and interesting to say and you say it clearly, it's usually quite acceptable. Even if it's not what the person doing the interview may not believe it at all, of course, that has almost nothing to do with it. Though I've had also very good experiences with interviewers. I mean, I remember an interviewer told me once, it was a radio interviewer. It was when John Paul died, the funeral of John Paul II. Millions of people, here, and there were long lines.
Yeah.
People going to confession in the street. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
She was a secular Jewish reporter, and she was like, John, I think I got to get out of here. If I stay any longer, I'm going to become a Catholic. This is just it's too heady.
It was
for
amazing.
the experience.
Yeah.
Right? It was, it's that powerful.
Yeah.
So I've had it easy, I would say, in terms of my interactions with the media has not been so challenging. And I think we're seeing today a renewed interest. There's no question, right? And specifically the Catholic Church.
Yes.
In the United States, but it's not just the U.S. I mean, in France and England and Spain, there's record numbers of baptisms of young adults and things like that. So there's something going on. And I mean, I was just talking with someone last night about a hilarious YouTube video that I saw of Joe Rogan talking with Russell Crowe.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you saw that.
I haven't.
It's Russell Crowe on Rogan's show, and they're talking about St. Peter's Basilica, and they're blown away.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, and they're like, and there's that statue of Mary, and she's holding Jesus, and it's the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. And they're like, what's it called? I don't remember. Who did that? It's like, that's the Pietà by Michelangelo. You really should know that.
Little guy named Michelangelo.
They were looking it up on air, on Googling, statue of St. Peter's. And, oh, this is it. Here it is. That's the one. It's
Yeah.
Michelangelo. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, people are fascinated by this, and and it's not simply sort of an aesthetic interest.
Yeah.
Because people are converting.
Yeah.
I've always thought that the beginning of the 20th century, that there was all the new atheists like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and all these people writing books, or Christopher Hitchens. My feeling was always that was kind of a last gasp, because those were older people who I think were shocked by the fact that they had reached their 60s or 70s and religion hadn't disappeared. And in their desperation, they wrote all these books, especially after 9/11.
Yeah.
Because what 9/11 said was, this thing of religion matters.
Yeah.
Historically. I mean, before that, the Middle East and Islam, it wasn't all, it was kind of, the Arabs are doing their thing, they have oil, but otherwise, it's not that present.
Yeah.
It's very present, and it's important, and it matters now as it mattered throughout history.
Yes.
And that fact that religion didn't go away, for people who were like growing up in the 60s and they were kind of expecting to see the end of it, and it didn't. And John Paul II's funeral, like, no, the 20th century began, the Pope was a prisoner of the Vatican, right? The Pope wasn't involved in, the peace treaty after World War I. We don't need your help here, Now the Pope is like the first citizen of the world.
Yeah.
Everyone wants, to be seen with the Pope, and it was supposed to go the other way, and it didn't. And I think there was a sort of desperate reaction that lasted until that generation has kind of died now.
Yeah.
And the younger generation that didn't grow up needing to rebel against their parents because their parents weren't believers, right? Or the other ones,
Rebelling was
the ones
going
in the
to
60s
church.
were rebelling, right? Now they're rebelling by going to church.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing now, I think.
You've spoken about the communication styles of the popes. John Paul II, you mentioned a little bit about how he was, the first citizen of the world. And Pope Benedict, obviously, a very different style, and Pope Francis after him, and Anything to say about Pope Leo? Yeah, tell us a little bit about the. It's too early, right? I mean, everybody wants to know.
The only thing I'll say is that Pope Leo doesn't come across as particularly American or particularly Chicagoan.
No.
For me, from my point of view, as an American from Chicago, I listen to Pope Leo and I don't say, oh, he's one of my homies. No, he's not. He doesn't sound like a Chicago guy.
Yeah.
He sounds like an international guy. I mean, he's been all over, and that's the case. I mean, he left Chicago when he was 14 to go to Michigan to the Augustinian High School. I left Chicago when I was 17, so I actually lived there a little longer than he did growing up. But both he and I have lived outside of the U.S. for most of our adult life. He was in Latin America. I was always here, So it's not surprising that doesn't
Chicago
present as Chicago as one might expect. With regard to the other popes, I say that basically John Paul II was a pope who was a playwright, had acted, and was at home with an audience. He felt at ease talking to thousands of people.
Yeah.
And he spoke at a level that was appropriate for that.
Yeah.
And that was not the case with Benedict. Benedict was a professor, a writer of theology, and he was self-effacing.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to be in front of huge crowds.
Yeah.
He would have been content to write his message, his speech, and put it in an envelope and give it to people. You read this at home and think about it, and it'll do you enormous good, right? It wasn't about being in front of a crowd.
Right.
And I think it's a sign of humility. It's not about me. Yeah. The fact that he resigned is also part of that story. It's not about me. The papacy is a bigger thing. The truth is a bigger thing. And then with Francis, it wasn't so much that he was comfortable with crowds. He ignored the crowd and would dealt with people one-on-one.
Wow.
Even when there was a crowd,
Yeah.
he would go one to one.
Yeah.
It was a very making eye contact, but he wasn't really a crowd pleaser. As the way John Paul acted like a figure on a monumental stage.
Yeah.
But Francis wasn't that way.
Right.
He was effective,
Yes.
but I think it was because he was natural, and he would speak to people but it wasn't the grand gestures of an actor.
Right.
It was more, I've only talked in my life, to one person at a time. I'm not going to change. And he was himself. And it was very effective because he was natural. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting how just those different personalities and those different communication styles have really impacted the church as a whole globally. I mean, for most of my life, John Paul II was the Holy Father, and then when he passed away, I was doing a study abroad in Austria. We, saw the black flag on over the Vatican flag. We were in Luxembourg or somewhere, and my buddy who spoke French, he's like asking, what is this? And the Holy Father died. And so we took the train directly down here. We were one of the first few that were online to view the body. But yeah, it's just impacted the church so much. And you think of World Youth Days and all the things that came out of these different papacies and how great of an impact that was. What about principles from classical literature, rhetoric, or philosophy? What do you think they're most needed? Where do you think they're most needed to effectively communicate Christian principles today?
Yeah, it depends. Depends on the context. I would say there's different elements in different genres of literature that I think are important for communicating today. If it's poetry, I think there's something, what I was saying about beauty and earlier about the role that beauty plays in our being drawn to God or drawn to the faith. Poetry is literature being used in a very explicitly aesthetic way. The form of poetry, the rhyme and the meter and the imagery and all is meant to provoke contemplation. In a way that a novel is it's somewhat different, right? And so I'd say in the case of poetry, that contemplative side is crucial. And what you often find in great poetry, and this is related to the spirit of contemplation, is paradox.
Yeah.
And I think paradox is important. It's certainly important in faith. We just celebrated Easter, and the King of Life reigns dead. It's like he was dead, but he's alive, and it's like, the life and death, mixed, in a battle, and that kind of dynamic that provokes contemplation, just awe, right? Is closely related to paradox and poetry, and the formulation of how you put it, right, is important in poetry. And in a novel, it's a lot easier to translate a novel because you're telling a story and not so much focused on the exact phrases sometimes. But the phrases are, the exact phraseology is the poetry.
Yeah.
So it's a lot harder to translate. And I would say there's some things you find in literature. One of the very first works of Latin Christian literature is a dialogue called the Octavius, written by Minucius Felix in the late second century, say 180 A.D. maybe. He was a lawyer from North Africa working in Rome, and this dialogue is a Ciceronian dialogue. So he's borrowing the form of his culture, which was a pagan culture.
Yeah.
And he's using it to communicate the faith. And in the dialogue, there's three friends who take a walk to the beach, basically, to Ostia, from Rome to the sea. And while they're on the beach, they start talking about Christianity, and two are Catholic and two are Christians, and one is not. and there's a debate between two of them, and the other is the judge. One of the Christians is the judge.
Oh, wow.
Of course, the Christians win, right? Yeah, that was a foregone conclusion. But what's interesting about that, and this has to do with, I think, some ideals of classical literature that are important, is that the dialogue is not simply an argument. It's not. I mean, there's a whole introduction about how these three friends get together, and how they know each other and their family situations. One as a child who's just learning to talk, and he talks about all these things that they have in common.
Wow.
And their friendship, and how they have one soul together. And at the end, that becomes the way that the narrator, Minucius Felix, gets out of judging. He says, I don't want to have to judge because we're all winners. We now all share the same faith.
Wow.
We become friends at a higher level.
Wow.
And so he's basically presenting Christian apostolate, evangelism, as friendship, as a growth in friendship.
Wow.
And because along the way, the debate begins when the pagan sees a statue of a god, Serapis, a Hellenistic god, along the road, and he kisses his hand, just like Italians still do, in reverence, right? And one of the Christians says to the other one, who's the good friend of the pagan, says, "You allow your friend to live in darkness. What kind of friend are you?"
Wow.
So the failure to talk about Christ was a failure as a friend. If you're really his friend, you should want him to know the truth.
Wow.
And so those ideals, which are pagan ideas, I mean, the pagans understood friendship.
Yeah.
You know, Seneca or Cicero, they're writing about Aristotle, right, about friendship, and it's a great ideal in the pagan world, and it shows up in pagan literature, but it's taken aboard by Christians, and Jesus Christ says, "I call you friends."
Yeah.
To the apostles themselves, he
Yeah.
calls them friends. That ideal of something that is beautiful in a human way, but is also a Christian value, and closely connected to being a true Christian and a true apostle, is something I think, in terms of communicating the faith today, is as relevant as it ever was. Certainly, just as relevant as it was in the 2nd century.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Finally, one last question. What book, author, or historical figure has most profoundly influenced your own spiritual and intellectual life?
Well, probably because I wrote my doctoral dissertation about Walker Percy.
Okay.
Perhaps not my spiritual life as much as my intellectual life. If you spend that much time reading and studying an author, getting inside their thoughts, that's going to have an impact. The honest truth is that my tastes in literature are fairly conventional, I would say. I mean, Dante. Dante has had a huge impact on me.
Okay.
William Shakespeare. John Donne, Gerard Manley Hopkins. Earlier, it was a bit of a discovery while I was teaching, because obviously I didn't know all 20 centuries. When I started teaching my course, I had to learn a lot. Because I had studied Renaissance history and literature, but not medieval and early Christian literature in Greek and Latin and things. Well, one of the figures that I discovered, and I'm a huge fan of, is Ephraim the Deacon.
Okay.
Who I would say is up there with Dante.
Wow.
As one of the greatest. John of the Cross, another great poet. Poets who are great poets regardless of whether you believe in Christianity. Everyone recognized that Dante is a great poet. Or in Spanish literature, John of the Cross is the greatest lyric poet in Spanish. And that's not a controversial opinion. I mean, many non-believers would agree with me. And Ephraim, the Syrian, he is the real thing.
Wow. Okay.
And I have in my favor, I have the opinion of Saint Jerome. And he wrote a book called De Viris Illustribus, around year 400. And he mentions Ephraim, who's writing 50 years earlier or less. And he says, I've only read Greek translations, but he's clearly a genius.
Wow.
And you can imagine, as I say, with poetry, it's hard to translate. So in Syriac, it must be even more beautiful than Greek. So Ephraim the deacon, you know, full of paradox, by the way. I mentioned paradox as being part of communication of the faith.
Important.
The role of paradox in the poetry of Ephraim is absolutely central. His poems are mostly about the scenes of the Bible. Basically, he's contemplating a scene and seeing the beauty in it, and he draws it out with paradoxes, right? So that, like the very first, you know, before Dante famously did it in the Divine Comedy, you know, he has a whole poem about Mary holding Jesus, looking at him and saying, what should I call you? The role of paradox is absolutely central to the poetry of Saint Ephraim, the deacon. And before Dante did it in the Divine Comedy 1,000 years later, he had already sort of captured the idea of Mary, right, as daughter of her son, right? The God is Father and Jesus is God, and he's also the Son of Mary, and playing with that paradox where he has Mary looking at Jesus. Mary is looking at Jesus and she's saying, I don't know what to call you. Should I call you my God? Should I call you my son? Should I call you my Lord? You know, should I call you my brother? Right? All of those things apply. And playing with that and contemplating it, as I say, is a way of capturing the mystery of Christianity. And paradox is a sort of an ideal way, because a paradox, in a way, blocks your mind for a moment. It doesn't allow you to digest something, because two things that are not supposed to go together are put together, and you have to work it out, right? It's not digested as sort of transparently obvious. The way when you're talking, you would try to be as transparent as possible, to be as clear as possible. The paradox, you don't. You try and get people. Wait a second, I don't understand that. How could that be? Right? And that's exactly what Ephraim's doing all the time.
Oh, that's really cool. We'll have to look at that. I don't think
he
I've
has a
ever
beautiful
read
poem about the Annunciation, the moment of the Incarnation, right? The very moment of the Annunciation, Mary says yes to Gabriel, and he describes that moment as thunder entered her and made no sound.
Wow,
that's
wild.
It's like that power, the heavenly power that you associate with lightning and the sound, and that is all of a sudden inside Mary and silent.
Wow, that's incredible. Very cool.
He's a great poet.
Yeah. Well, Father John, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and thank you again for doing this.
Not at all.